Hello everyone! In this video, I will discuss the content of our research analysis entitled Quantitative Research, Social Workers' Perception Towards Mental Illness. But before that, let me introduce myself first. I am Murshid M. Nuruddin and a social work student. So let's discuss first the background of the study. Mental illness has a significant problem in the United States according to the National Association of Social Workers in 2012. It affects the lives of people regardless of their race, age, and as well as sex. There are 26% of adult population are suffering from mental illness, and 60% mental practitioners are social workers. Social worker must be aware of their perception towards mental illness and as well as they are vital in promoting social justice. The perception of social worker towards mental health causes a huge impact towards the overall needs of a client. This is why this study is focusing on the measurement of different stigmas associated with mental illness. The study is significant for social workers due to the fact that it helps them analyze their perceptions about mental illness, and at the same time, they are upholding the core standard of the National Association of Social Workers and its Code of Ethics. The overall research encompasses the values of social work's perception of mental illness and how stigma affects an individual. Social workers' perception can impact the overall needs of their clients, and most especially the people around them. Lodato and Theriot of 2012 stated that negative attitudes can affect the clients with mental illness who receive services. Although social workers receive special training in accordance with the National Association of Social Workers Code of Ethics, they also encounter same social influence and messaging that existing in the community. So let's proceed with conceptual framework. In this section of research study, it introduces the social labeling theory. According to Link, Young, Felland, and Collins of 2004, the major part in measuring stigma is through labeling of individuals with mental illness. The importance of social labeling is it identifies the social forces and its factor within abnormal behavior. Catalano of 1979 concluded that the person will be labeled as criminal if the individual breaks a certain law. He also added that labeling consists of four basic assumptions. First, abnormal behavior is breaking of residual rules. Second, residual rule breaking is sometimes a strategy to reduce anxiety. Third, professional treatment for those labeled individuals actually condition them to act abnormally. And lastly, societal reform is the key to reduce abnormal behaviors. The study used quantitative method and as well as cross-section design. There are two purposes of the research. First, to assess social workers' perception towards mental illness. And second, to examine the level of education, professional experience, and as well as personal experience. The participants are licensed social workers coming from Minnesota. The statistical tool used in the survey is called Qualtrics. The research study uses the Perception of Mental Illness Survey, or also known as POMIS, and it's consisting of 39 questions related to stigma. There are also four previous scales. From question number 14 to 23 uses self-stigma of mental scale. For question number 24 to 35 are from attribution questionnaire, or also known as AQ27. For questions number 36 to 39 uses attitudes to mental illness scale. From question number 15 to 13 were created by the researcher and as well as the question number 1 to 4. So the survey was taken from January 28 to February 11. The survey was open for 2 weeks. A sample of 996 licensed social workers' email address was taken or obtained from the Minnesota BOSW. The participants were given a consent form to read prior to taking both the email and at the start of the survey. Qualtrics was used to collect data through web browser. So in order to answer the research question of what are social workers' perception of mental illness related stigma, how does it differ from the level of education, professional experience, and personal experience? The following statistical tools were used such as frequency distribution table, chi-square, person correlation, and independent t-test. Social workers must be aware that having negative attitudes, stereotyping, and discrimination towards anyone can be harming, according to the National Association of Social Work. The study found that there was a moderate and negative correlation between years worked and perception of dangerousness towards people diagnosed of mental illness. In other words, the perception of the social worker towards the dangerousness of mental illness went down the more years a social worker worked. A social worker plays a vital role in many individuals who suffer from stigma. This research has indicated that Minnesota licensed social workers who responded to the survey do more differ statistically in this response based on the level of education, personal experience, and as well as professional experience. The researchers recommends that more research is necessary to develop a better understanding of mental illness. The perception about mental illness of every individual is significant in order for us to become an effective social worker. Nowadays, there are many scenarios, problems, and issues about mental illness not only in the local context but most especially in the global context. The research study was conducted due to the fact that we wanted to know the relationship of a social worker's perception towards mental illness based on their level of education, personal experience, as well as their professional experience. We wanted to know if the social worker's level of education and experience affect their perception towards mental illness or not. Moreover, we also need to know the stigma and its impact on acquiring mental illness. In order for the researcher to acquire the needed data, they use statistical tools that can possibly answer the researcher's question. These statistical tools are the frequency distribution, chi-square, independent t-test, and person correlation. The frequency distribution was used in order to measure the demographic status of participants based on their age, race, gender, and political philosophy by getting the frequency, percentage, as well as the mean. It measures three variables, and these are the level of education, level of personal experience, and level of professional experience. Using distribution or using the frequency distribution, we can be able to identify the differences of every participants. There are three questions that must be answered. First, does personal experiences change the way social workers perceive stigma related to mental illness? Second, The social worker's level of education changed the way social worker perceive dangerousness. Lastly, what is the correlation between social workers' perception, experience, and his or her perception of mental illness? The question number 1 and 2 can be answered through the use of chi-square, where the last question is answerable through using person correlation. The independent t-test was used to answer the question, does the amount of training per year of social workers enhance their perception about mental illness? If I will be given a chance to change something in the research study, I will change the title itself. I think changing it into social workers' perception and level of education experience towards mental illness is more appropriate. I think by this title, the reader will be interested due to the fact that the independent and the dependent variable are already stated in the research title.